Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Huo Yuhao said plainly, I was in my most difficult time when you first launched your attack. When that happened, your spiritual power was in my brain, and Long Xiaoyao's immense soul power started revolting, because I had used too much soul power. I was in trouble both from the outside and from the inside, and I could have crumbled at any moment. It was almost impossible for me to turn things around with my own strength. Then, you appeared. Your biggest mistake was that you wanted to preserve my body too much. Therefore, you didn't attack my spiritual soul core as soon as was possible, and chose to control me instead, while assimilating my spiritual sea at the same time. You did that because you were afraid that attacking my spiritual soul core would cause me to lose control over my soul power, and if that happened, you could only accompany me as we blew up together. That is all true. If you had chosen to attack my spiritual soul core instead, we would have perished together in the end. Fortunately, you didn't do that, and I have to thank you for that. You were unwilling to die, and so am I, because I still wish to accompany my lover for all of eternity. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I borrowed the Ice Emperor's strength to temporarily seal Long Xiaoyao's violent and vigorous soul power, as I readjusted and realigned my body at the same time. I didn't have any strength to retaliate against you at that point, and that was also when you had your greatest opportunity. If you had chosen to attack my spiritual soul core, before using your formidable power to take over my body as quickly as possible, you might have completed your possession. But you were too paranoid because I wasn't retaliating, and you reacted logically by attempting to dominate my spiritual sea for stability. Under normal circumstances, your decision would have been right, but I'm different from normal people. My spiritual sea is no longer within human boundaries, because there is an aura from another world contained within it. Therefore, I wasn't afraid of you dominating my spiritual sea from the beginning to the end, because you cannot possibly become my spiritual sea's true master, and neither can you wipe out my consciousness. Therefore, I reacted according to what you were hoping for. I struggled for a few moments before I stopped, while I concentrated on my own soul power to control it. My effort over that period of time finally allowed me to completely withdraw and stabilize the disorganized and messy soul power within my body, and I even managed to gain control over some of Long Xiaoyao's soul power. My situation was completely stabilized, while you also gave me a pleasant surprise, because you integrated your spiritual origin into my spiritual sea. I initially believed that only my companions, my spirits, could do so, but it turned out that you could, too. Therefore, I have to thank you. Right now, I have wholly absorbed my 9th soul ring that you've given me, and my spiritual power has exceeded that of any living being on the continent. Not even the beast god, Di Tian, can compete with me in that respect. I believe that your spiritual power was probably at around the same standard even during your strongest times. Therefore, I must thank you. I know you really wish to ask, how have I done all this? I should tell you, too, because you will die with unresolved grievances otherwise. What you just felt was happiness, anger, sorrow, and bliss. You felt the power of emotions, as my spiritual sea contains power that doesn't belong to this world, a godly seed. The god of emotions has set his eyes upon me and my talents, and has given me this opportunity. How can you dominate my spiritual sea with this godly seed around? You, the evil eye tyrant king, was over the top with fury, and his enormous evil eye radiated black waves. However, how could he fight against the Snow Empress, who had also burned her spiritual sense to integrate herself into Huo Yuhao? The Snow Empress was third among the 10 great savage beasts, and the evil eye tyrant king would have had a hard time defeating her even during his strongest times, not to mention under these circumstances. A short blade that was emanating faint mist hovered in midair, and the blade was pointed downwards. Icy blue sword light pointed right, at the enormous evil eye projected in the sky. The evil eye had lost all color and liveliness, and there were only gray hues deep within his pupil, the color of hopelessness and defeat. Chilly sword light descended upon the evil eye mercilessly, and brutally pierced into it. Huo Yuhao's soul power, which had been held back over so many days, finally erupted. Those whirlpools that were mixed with spiritual power and soul power rose once more, and Huo Yuhao's spiritual soul core guided them as they swiftly rushed into his spiritual sea. Whirlpools appeared one after another inside his dark red spiritual sea, and golden specks of light dispersed in all directions. Happiness, anger, sorrow, and bliss switched in between one another and suppressed the Evil Eye Tyrant King's spiritual power to the point that he couldn't control his own spiritual power effectively anymore. The Evil Eye Tyrant King could only look on as golden light fused into Huo Yuhao's spiritual sea continuously, and his morning dew dagger's icy radiance was breaking down and disintegrating the Evil Eye Tyrant King's frozen spiritual sense piece by piece. Tang Wutong, who was sitting opposite Huo Yuhao with her legs crossed, opened her eyes and watched as the dark red patterns over Huo Yuhao's face gradually receded. The Evil Eye Tyrant King's projection behind his back dissipated, and she heaved a sigh of relief as she closed her eyes once more. This time, she no longer worried about anything as she entered deep meditation. 3 years later. The Star Luo Empire's capital, Star Luo City. The sky was grey, and the stench of smoke and gunpowder permeated the air. The heavens were dim and gloomy, and dark clouds threatened to shower the city with a monsoon. Less than a third of Star Luo City's northern city walls were still standing, but defensive perimeters of soul tools could still be seen. The other 3 sides had the same setup, as soul tools resembled a forest of metal as they protected the city. However, there was an even larger and denser forest of metal outside this one. 50 kilometers to Star Luo City's west, and 50 kilometers to Star Luo City's north, the air was filled with insidious murderousness, and all kinds of surveillance soul tools dotted the skies. They were all pointed toward Star Luo City. Vast patches of soul tools that formed numerous soul tool fronts stretched across the earth, and they resembled an immense pincer that could pinch down on Star Luo City at any moment. Star Luo City was the 3 native empires' final defensive line. Yes, the city was their last defense. The Heavenly Soul Empire was destroyed more than 3 years ago. The Sun Moon Empire's emperor, Shu Qianran, had suddenly passed away not long afterward, and the crown prince, Shu Yunhan, ascended to the throne. The War God Empress ruled the empire on the new emperor's behalf. The continent welcomed a period of peace that didn't even last a year. When everyone believed that the Sun Moon Empire had descended into disarray and chaos to the point that the war would be delayed for another few years, the Sun Moon Empire's great armies launched another invasion without warning over 2 years ago. The Sun Moon Empire had deployed 8 Soul Engineer legions, who had discreetly followed the Heavenly Soul Empire's northern borders towards the east and eventually broke through the Doling Empire's northern borders. They ambushed the Doling Empire so quickly that they couldn't even react. The invincible Soul Engineer legions used but 18 days to fight their way outside Doling City's gates. Doling City was broken before Shrek City's reinforcements could arrive. Xuelingshuan took her remaining troops and escaped, and rendezvoused with Shrek City's Soul Engineer legions, as they retreated continuously after consistent defeats. The War God Empress, Zhu Zi, personally led 7 other Soul Engineer legions and the Sun Moon Empire's 400,000-strong army toward the Mingdo mountain range, which was on the Star Luo Empire's western border. The Sun Moon Empire unleashed a heavy bombardment against the Mingdo mountain range that lasted for 10 days, and forced the Star Luo Empire to mobilize their main forces towards the western regions to defend themselves, so that they couldn't reinforce the Doling Empire. In an attempt to break the Sun Moon Empire's pincer attack, the White Tiger Duke Dai Hao had personally commanded 3 legions of Soul Masters to ambush the Sun Moon Empire's armies along the Star Luo Empire's northern borders that had once belonged to the Heavenly Soul Empire. However, he suffered an irrevocable defeat, as the Sun Moon Empire's first batch of linked defensive soul tools supported by high-energy compression array soul tools unleashed their immense power along the Heavenly Soul Empire's borders, and they repelled the White Tiger Duke's ambush just like that. The Doling Empire had Shrek Academy's help, and they finally stabilized their southern regions into a standoff against the Sun Moon Empire. The Sun Moon Empire's 300,000 soldiers that came a month later entered the Doling Empire through the Heavenly Soul Empire and consolidated their dominated territories, and they completely conquered Doling City, along with more than half of the Doling Empire's territories. The Sun Moon Empire's invasion was launched on all fronts, while the War God Empress, Zhu personally commanded the three armies. 3 gaping holes were blown through the Mingdo mountain range 1 month later, and the Sun-Moon Empire's armies streamed in as they broke through the Star-Luo Empire's defensive perimeters one after another with support from their Soul Engineer legions. They broke the Mingdo mountain range, and regained control over it. The Star-Luo Empire's armies were beaten back continuously, and suffered heavy losses. Their 5 Soul Engineer legions that they had just established were almost utterly crippled, as their inferior Soul tool technology became the main reason for their defeat. The Doling Empire managed to stabilize themselves with Shrek Academy's help on the other side. However, they couldn't do anything to push back against the Sun-Moon Empire's formidable Soul tool fronts. Shrek Academy couldn't be in 2 places at once, and the Academy couldn't support both empires at the same time. They could only choose to reinforce the Doling Empire, because the empire was in an extremely dire situation. The continent descended into another impasse, but both the Star-Luo Empire and the Doling Empire didn't know that Zhu's true motive wasn't to dominate the entire continent in one go. The Sun-Moon Empire mobilized many workers and smiths after they dominated the Doling Empire's northern regions, and they began excavating the mines and metals that they had discovered around the borders between the Heavenly Soul Empire and the Doling Empire under 2 beast-rank Soul Engineer legions' protection. Large volumes of rare metals were transported back to the Sun-Moon Empire, and they were used to build and improve upon all kinds of Soul tools. The Sun-Moon Empire reduced their budget on researching and building stationary Soul cannon shells. Instead, they diverted their resources and budget towards high-energy compression array Soul tools. They decreased the size of their high-energy compression array Soul tools continuously, while maintaining their strength as much as possible at the same time. 6 months later, Kong Deming led the Sun-Moon Empire's worship hall, as they achieved another breakthrough in their Soul tool technology. They mastered the art of absorbing and storing light, and they absorbed and stored sunlight to become persistent and long-lasting fuel for their high-energy compression array Soul tools. Their equipment was oversized and clumsy even though they could store sunlight for a long time, but even so, they opened a new door for their Soul tool technology. The Star-Luo Empire and the Doling Empire were clueless about that, and they could only develop their Soul tools as much as possible with Shrek Academy's help so that they could attempt a fight to the death with the Sun-Moon Empire in the future. 1 year ago, the Sun-Moon Empire had suddenly launched a fierce attack from the Mingdo mountain range against the Star-Luo Empire without any warning, and they mobilized 12 Soul Engineer legions with more than 500,000 soldiers. They only kept 4 Soul Engineer legions and 200,000 soldiers at the Doling Empire's side, relying on their high-energy compression array Soul tools for defense. The Star-Luo Empire suffered continuous defeats. The White Tiger Duke was a renowned commander of his generation, but his army's strength was at an absolute disadvantage, and he couldn't do much to retaliate. The Sun-Moon Empire used but a month to conquer vast patches of land in the Star-Luo Empire's western territory, and more than half of the Star-Luo Empire's territory ended up in their enemies' hands. Shrek City's 3 Soul Engineer legions and Shrek Academy's powerful individuals arrived in the nick of time, and they brought new Soul tools that the Tang sect had invented and improvised. They were barely able to block the Sun-Moon Empire's ferocious invasion in the end. But nobody expected that, at a time like this, a single army with a few hundred people appeared inside the Doling Empire like they had torn through space. More accurately put, there were 300 people. However, these 300 had a legendary reputation. They were the Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion. They were the hand that protects the nation's thumb, and the only Emperor-ranked Soul Engineer Legion across the entire continent. Every one of them was equipped with a human-shaped Soul tool, and each individual could reach a Class 8 Soul Engineers standard. 4 Class 9 Soul Engineers were at the helm, and they dealt the heaviest blow to the Doling Empire's defending armies. This diversion wasn't that impressive, but because their overall strength was at an absolute advantage, this simple tactic achieved excellent results. Zhu made use of the Doling Empire and the Star-Luo Empire's inertial thinking. From everyone's perspective, the Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Legion was a formidable and intimidating force, but their most important job was to protect Radiant City. But nobody considered the fact that Radiant City no longer needed protection, with the current situation that the continent was in. Juzi discreetly mobilized the Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Legion under such circumstances, and she deployed the Legion onto the battlefield. They accomplished their mission, and with the Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Legion, at the helm of several Soul Engineer Legions stationed inside the Doling Empire cooperating with them, and in addition to the Sun-Moon Empire's 200,000 soldiers, they pushed the Doling Empire's armies back irrevocably. The Doling Empire's armies could no longer stop the Sun-Moon Empire's forward march. The Sun-Moon Empire's greatest advantage had always been their control over surveillance and intel. They relied on their absolute dominance in high-altitude aerial surveillance Sol tools. The Star Luo Empire and Shrek Academy only received this news a month later, and less than 100,000 of the Doling Empire's remaining armies retreated out of the Doling Empire under Xueling Xuan's leadership, entering Shrek City's territory. Only then did the Sun-Moon Empire's armies stop their pursuit. Juzi had been keeping her promise to Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao's 1 versus 10 challenge seemed to give everyone an extremely deep impression, and no matter how the war had developed, Shrek Academy was never attacked. This time was no exception, either. The Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineering chased the Doling Empire's remaining armies out of their own territory, and they conquered the entire Doling Empire, before they immediately withdrew their forces and returned to the Doling Empire. They stationed their forces near the borders and constructed Sol tool fronts. At this point, the Doling Empire was no more. The Sun-Moon Empire had completely conquered the Doling Empire. The entire Star Luo Empire was devastated when they heard that nightmarish news. The Doling Empire's destruction meant that the Sun-Moon Empire was about to concentrate all their strength against them. How could the Star Luo Empire fight the Sun-Moon Empire with their current strength? Their nation's destruction was but a matter of time. What happened subsequently proved that fact. The Sun-Moon Empire paused their invasion after conquering the Doling Empire, and it was evident that they were accumulating strength while consolidating their conquered territories. The Sun-Moon Empire also began to change their tactics. They no longer launched frontal assaults, but they started to disperse their armies as they surrounded the Star Luo Empire from the Sun-Moon Empire, the Heavenly Soul Empire, and the Doling Empire's borders. The Sun-Moon Empire didn't want to conquer the Star Luo Empire in one go, but they continuously assimilated and ate into the Star Luo Empire's territory. The Star Luo Empire's overall strength was considered to be the strongest among the 3 native empires, but how much of their strength could they display under such circumstances? Shrek Academy was supporting them as much as they could, but the Academy's strength was limited. They could defend a city, but protecting an entire nation was just too difficult. 3 years had gone by as the war progressed, ever since Huo Yuhao and Tang Wutong went missing. Much of the Star Luo Empire's southern lands ended up in their enemies' hands, and circumstances were similar for the empire's other regions. The only area that was still within the Star Luo Empire's control was the area around Star Luo City, as more than 80% of the empire's territory ended up in the Sun-Moon Empire's hands. Everyone knew at this point that the Sun-Moon Empire's position to unite the entire continent was irreversible, but the Star Luo Empire was still hanging on by a thread as much as they could, and they were unwilling to give up even if there was but a single ounce of hope left. The Sun-Moon Empire finally completed their encirclement, which was the current situation, half a month ago, and they finally launched their 3rd ferocious invasion. Sol tools had become mainstream on the battlefield after so many years of war. The Sun-Moon Empire's research had already enabled them to use Sol tools without Sol power, and even normal soldiers could be equipped with Sol tools in the near future. This was a byproduct of high-energy compression array Sol tools and their ability to utilize sunlight. A war with Sol tools was a war of attrition, and a war of how many Sol tools and reserves both sides could afford to lose. The Star Luo Empire could defend themselves temporarily, but they were but a single city in their current situation, but they were up against the entire continent. The Sun-Moon Empire's armies were at the gates, and Star Luo City's millions of citizens were mired in a stifling atmosphere every day. The Star Luo Empire was left with 400,000 soldiers. The rest had either been annihilated, or had deserted to become part of the Sun-Moon Empire. On the other side, the Sun-Moon Empire had surrounded Star Luo City with 1 million soldiers, and their forces included the Hand that protects the nation, which comprised the Sun-Moon Imperial Soul Engineer Legion, the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion, the Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion, the Fire Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion, and the Terraclaw Soul Engineer Legion. Their main forces on the battlefield consisted of 18 Soul Engineer Legions. The Sun Moon Empire had already established many Soul Tool fronts, and there were 8 miniature high-energy compression array Soul Tools among them. They had been charging and storing sunlight over the past 2 weeks, and they were preparing to deal the heaviest possible blow to Star Luo City. Inside Star Luo City's royal palace, the Great Hall was deathly quiet. The Star Luo Empire's emperor sat on the throne, but his face was ghastly pale, and his eyes were vacant. Everyone could see the kind of burden and pressure he was under from his dry, cracked lips, and the dark circles under his eyes. There were people who were seated beneath him, and one of them was Shrek Academy's Elder Xian. Elder Xian's expression was calm, but his eyes were very dim and gloomy. Shrek Academy's individuals were seated beneath him, and the elders from the Sea Gods Pavilion all had a seat. The Tang sect's strongest individuals stood behind these elders. Bei Bei took the lead as Tang Ya, Shu Sansha, He Kaitu, Jiang Nan Nan, Xiao Xiao, Yi Gai, Ji Juechen, Nan Qiuqiu, Jing Ziyan, and even Xian Ziwen and Jiao Delu, along with the Soul Tool Hall's other individuals, were all present. Shrek Academy's elites were almost all gathered in this place. The Star Luo Empire's subjects and officials sat on the other side, and the White Tiger Duke sat at the helm. Princess Jiujiu was clad in armor as she sat beneath him. Princess Jiujiu's expression was equally pale, and she was overwhelmed with fatigue. The war had continued for almost 2 years, and she had witnessed her enemies assimilate her country's territory continuously. It wasn't hard to imagine the pressure she was feeling. The White Tiger Duke was evidently a lot older and frailer than before, and his hair and beard had turned white. He was only a little over 50 years old, and he was also a titled Doluo. According to normal circumstances, he should be in his prime. Hi, the Star Luo Empire's emperor heaved a long sigh as he slowly stood up from his throne. Your Majesty. The various subjects and officials bowed, and their voices quivered as they spoke. The Star Luo Empire's emperor, Shu Jiawei, waved his hand and said, "Let us not kid ourselves anymore. Star Luo City's defeat is but a matter of time. My beloved subjects, you have contributed much to the empire beside me over the years. Our defeat in this war is a result of the changing times. I consider myself industrious, but there is a gap which has resulted because of our stubbornness and refusal to advance with the times over a few thousand years. We have discovered this problem, but we are no longer able to change the situation. I am emperor to a nation, so let me take responsibility for these mistakes. At ease, my dear subjects. Take as many family members as you can, leave the Star Luo Empire, and submit to the Sun Moon Empire. I will never fault you for that. Your Majesty." An elderly white-haired official howled agonizingly, as he went onto his knees with tears rolling down his face. "Your Majesty, I swear to live and die with the country." Many subjects and officials went down on their knees, but the White Tiger Duke wasn't among them. There were some others who didn't kneel with sparkles in their eyes. Dai Hao's expression was solemn and serious. "Your Majesty, we should only boost our army's morale, not reduce it. We will protect your Majesty's safety, even if it comes to sacrificing every last soldier." Shu Jiawei shook his head and said, "I've already said that we shouldn't lie to ourselves anymore. I am very aware of how dire our situation is, and everyone else is equally aware. Pass my order, Dai Hao, to open the eastern and southern gates so that our citizens may leave. We will not hold those who wish to surrender." The Star Luo Empire's emperor had relinquished his last hope with those words. Elder Xian was silent, and didn't say anything at all. In his heart, he was even a little in awe of the Star Luo Empire's emperor. He was very clear. He was right. Given the current circumstances, even Elder Xian couldn't do anything, even though he was an ultimate Doluo. The city's fate was sealed, and couldn't be reversed. Dai Hao was a hero, but he was born in the wrong time. He couldn't fully unleash his abilities as a commander, as he was suppressed by Soul Tool technology. He could only watch as the Sun Moon Empire suppressed the Star Luo Empire, through their absolute advantage in terms of soul tool technology. Although the Tang sect and Xianziwen were in Shrek City, Xianziwen was only one man. How could he challenge an entire empire and its thousands of years of history? He had also grown much older over the past few years. Even though he was already a titled Doluo, he was simply drained too much every day. The Tang sect's soul tool technology had been growing. It was already close to mainstream soul tool technology. However, whether it was in terms of resources, production ability, scale or research capabilities, it was still inferior to the Sun Moon Empire. These were irreversible. Should I really let the Sun Moon Empire rule the continent? Elder Xian shut his eyes painfully. Although the Sun Moon Empire didn't attack Shrek City eventually, there still seemed to be a huge rock on Elder Xian's chest. Your Majesty, I'll leave first. I'll serve you in my next life. One official turned around and left. Tears were streaming down his face. One person was fine. However, there couldn't just be one official standing here. If they didn't think for themselves, they still had to think for their families. With the first came the second. In just a little while, more than half the court was already gone. Xu Jiawei laughed mockingly and slowly came in front of Elder Xian. Elder Xian. He bent down and bowed to Elder Xian. Elder Xian raised his hands and lifted him up with gentle soul power. At the same time, Xu Jiawei also stood up. It wasn't just his respect for an emperor. It was his respect for an emperor who treasured life. Your Majesty. Xu Jiawei sighed and said, I represent the Star Luo Empire. Thank you, Shrek Academy. Thank you, Tang sect. Without both of you, the Star Luo Empire would have been destroyed. Thanks. However, things have finally come to an end. Elder Xian, you and the others from the Academy and the sect should leave too. After all, the Academy is independent. It doesn't belong to any empire. You've already gone to such lengths for the Star Luo Empire. We are grateful for that. But you can't continue. It might enrage the Sun Moon Empire. The Star Luo Empire can die, but Shrek Academy can't. Shrek is where the true legacy of the Doluo empires lie. Elder Xian furrowed his brow and sighed heavily. He knew Xu Jiawei was right. Just like the officials who had left, Elder Xian could ignore his own plight, but he was still the master of the Sea God's Pavilion. He had to think for the million people in Shrek City. Moreover, there were still troops from the Doling Empire in Shrek City. The remaining royal family members of the Doling Empire were all in Shrek. Your Majesty, even though Shrek isn't capable of protecting the Star Luo Empire, we can still lead the royal family back to Shrek if you are willing to do so. You can find an opportunity to rise again in the future. How about that? Xu Jiawei laughed and shook his head. He replied, no. The Sun Moon Empire has occupied too much land. Shrek City is only a city. If the Empire wants to exert pressure, it doesn't even need to attack. It just has to cut off all supply routes, so that Shrek City becomes helpless. Elder Xian, let me give you a word of advice. After you return, ask the Doling and Heavenly Soul Empire's royal families to dismiss their troops. In that way, Shrek can still survive. Otherwise, even Shrek City can't protect them. After he finished speaking, Xu Jiawei suddenly kneeled down in front of Elder Xian. Your Majesty, what are you doing? Elder Xian gave way and was astonished as he looked at the emperor. From his earlier words, Elder Xian could tell that he was superior to the emperors of both the Heavenly Soul and Doling empires. This was probably also why the Star Luo Empire was the last to be destroyed. Elder Xian, I have a request. Xu Jiawei could no longer call himself the emperor now. As he said this, not only was his expression serious, but it was also filled with an indescribable sense of persistence. Your Majesty, please tell me. Elder Xian replied respectfully. Xu Jiawei said, after the Sun Moon Empire conquers the continent and changes it to the Sun Moon continent, I hope that you plant a seed of revenge for the three empires of the original Doluo continent. In the future, our future generations will change the name back one day. When he said this, everyone's expressions changed. The name of the Doluo continent had already been around for thousands of years. Was it really going to change now? The few officials that had walked out of the hall stopped in their tracks. They unwittingly clenched their fists. Elder Xian's body shook. His eyes brightened. If the Sun Moon Empire really changes the name of the continent, I swear that I'll make sure the Sun Moon Empire's royal lineage will never carry on. This is even if it catalyzes widespread chaos. The name of the Doluo continent had been around for thousands of years. It carried the desire of every soul master too. How could it be tarnished just like this? An empire could fall, but the name of the continent must never change. Suddenly, the crowd in the hall were all very agitated. They all kneeled down in front of Elder Xian. At this moment, a majestic voice sounded. Message from the War God Empress, hand over the White Tiger Duke in 3 days. The Star Luo Empire can surrender, and deaths can be avoided. No looting will occur, no invasion will be carried out, and everything will remain as it is in Star Luo City. Otherwise, I'll wreak havoc. When she mentioned the words wreak havoc, huge sound waves shook the entire city. The city could surrender only if the White Tiger Duke was surrendered. Why was this the condition? Even though the White Tiger Duke had been fighting the Sun Moon Empire these past few years, did they really have to fear him considering the absolute advantage they possess? Report. A messenger ran in from the outside. Your Majesty, Star Luo City has been surrounded, and the northern and southern city gates have been sealed. The officials and their families who planned to defect to the Sun Moon Empire, as well as civilians, were all chased back into the city. No surrender is allowed. No one is allowed to leave the city. When they heard these words, everyone around was horrified. Surrendering wasn't even an option. The White Tiger Duke gritted his teeth until they almost broke. He clenched his fists tightly. Bastard. Xu Jiawei's facial muscles were also contorting. No matter what, he hadn't expected to be in such a state, he couldn't even surrender. Sound waves were heard once again, just like before. Through the sound amplifiers carried by surveillance soul tools, all of Star Luo City could hear this voice. Your Majesty. The White Tiger Duke kneeled on one knee. Please allow me to fight them myself. I won't surrender, but I'm willing to fight until I die. Nonsense. Xu Jiawei shouted at the top of his voice. You are a loyal official of this court. Without you, this empire will cease to exist. I can hand myself over, but I won't hand you over. Perhaps we aren't doomed yet. At this moment, a slightly low-pitched and hoarse voice sounded. What? Xu Jiawei subconsciously turned back. Someone walked out from the crowd behind Elder Xian. When he walked out, both Xu Jiawei and the White Tiger Duke were stunned. They wouldn't be very bothered if it was someone else who said those words earlier. However, because it came from this person, it felt as if they had a glimmer of hope. Hall Master Xian, what good idea do you have? Xu Jiawei asked anxiously. Yes, the person who had walked out from the crowd was the Hall Master of the Tang sect's Soul Tool Hall. Xian Zuan looked much more elderly than before. He had been tirelessly researching over the past few years, but he was rarely involved with soul tool production now, especially over the past year or so. He was researching almost day in and day out. He only left his laboratory after the Star Luo Empire came under serious threat. He also brought the elites from the Soul Tool Hall out with him. However, he didn't cease his research. But no one knew what he had been researching. Xian Zuan was abnormally red. However, there was an excited look in his eyes. He said, let those who have left leave. It's best to let go of the officials who can't weather the storm with you. Your Majesty, my research has succeeded. The Sun Moon Empire won't be able to take advantage so easily. What? The White Tiger Duke immediately stood up. His eyes brightened. There was a look of desire as he stared at Xian Zuan. He knew that this was perhaps the last hope for the Star Luo Empire. Sun Moon Empire Base. Juzi was wearing fire-red armor, and standing silently in front of the commander's tent. She was looking at the Star Luo city's walls. 3 years had passed. Time didn't have any effect on her. She was still as beautiful as ever. The last ultimatum has been issued. I'm only waiting for their reply now. From the current situation in the Star Luo Empire, they have no choice. The White Tiger Duke will most certainly surrender, given how loyal he is. In this way, I can kill fewer people when the city surrenders. In that case. As she thought until here, Juzi's body shuddered. An indescribable fear spread in her heart. She couldn't help but sigh. It's been 3 years. He has indeed not returned. However, I still feel very terrified when I think of him as I take down cities. This video will end here.